the Lord, my beautiful, blessed souls. We are back with another word. We are in Judges chapter 6, and it is a good word. I am back. I'm getting it together. As you can see, I done got me some sleep. I'm trying to get my life all the way back together. So anyway, today's word, May 29th, we're going into is legacy. And this is a great word for this word itself. So we are going to get into this. Now I'm going to read it. It says, how can I make lasting memories of God's work in my life? The Bible is the record of God's work in history. Reading it reminds us and our children of who God is and what he has done. As the Israelites set up stones to remind them of God's miraculous parting of the Jordan River, we can find creative ways to remind ourselves and our families God's special work in our lives and in the lives of those who have gone before us. We can celebrate special anniversaries, write spiritual journals, sing worship songs, and or tell stories of memories laden objects to remind us of God's blessing in our lives. What are we doing today to show God's faithfulness to future generations? Exodus 16:32, Moses gave them this command from the Lord. Take 2 quarts of manna and keep it forever as a treasured memorial for the Lord's provision. By doing this, later generations will be able to see the bread that the Lord provided in the wilderness when he brought you out of Egypt. That was the manna, remember? Then we have Joshua 4:6-7, and it says, we will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean to you? Then you can tell them. Now, we always want to leave behind legacies. Actually, one of my grandsons' name is Legacy. And it is an important thing. Why? For our children, for us to remember. These are times, like I said before, because at times we can get discontented in life. We can be, distracted, discouraged about different things happening. And it is a way to help us and remind us of what God has already done in our lives so that we can hold on a little bit longer. This is just like relationships. They're not all bad. Some, at times they were good, different type of things. But we want to remember the past and what was done and what went on. And we want to remember the lessons and the blessings and move forward to know where we are presently, to know where we're moving forward to. So now, Judges chapter 6, let's get into it. This is going to be a beautiful word. This is right after the song that Deborah and them had wrote. It is a beautiful thing. Okay, so now I'm going to try not to make this video too long. I know I have been saying this for the longest. Okay, so the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel, and because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains and the caves and the strongholds. We're going to get into that. For whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them, and they would encamp against them and devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep and no ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, and they would come in like locusts in number. Both they and their camels would not be counted, so that they laid waste, and the land came in, and Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord. So when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord on the account of Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel, and he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of slavery, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. So now the angel of the Lord came and sat up under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash and Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. And Gideon said to him, please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us in this time in our life? When we ask that, we're going to get into that. And where are all these wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us? This is the legacy. We've been telling them how good God is, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the Lord turned to him and said, Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you? And he said to him, Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh. We're going to talk about that too. And I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man. And he said to them, If now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you that speak with me. Please do not depart from here until I come to you and bring out my present and set it before you. And he said, I will stay till you return. So Gideon went into the house and prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes from an ephah flour. The meat he put in a basket, and the broth he put in a pot. And he brought them to him under the terebinth and presented it to him. And the angel of God said to him, Take the meat and unleavened cakes and put them on this rock and pour the broth over them. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord reached out the tip of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes. And the fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes, and the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Then Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord, and then Gideon said, Alas, O God, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But the Lord said to him, Peace be to you, do not fear. You shall not die. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, The Lord is Peace. So to this day it still stands at Orpha, which belongs to the Abiezrites. Now that night the Lord said to him, Take your father's bull and the second bull, 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on the top of the mountain, on top of the stronghold there, with stones laid in due order. And then take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah that you shall cut down. So Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men and the town to do it by day, he did it by night. So when the men of the town rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Asherah beside it was cut down, and the second bull was offered on the altar that had been built. We're going to talk about that. And they said to one another, Who has done this thing? And after that they had searched and inquired, and they said, Gideon the son of Joash has done this thing. Then the men of the town said to Joash, Bring out your son that he may die, for he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it. But Joash said to all who stood against him, Will you contend for Baal, or will you save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down. Therefore on that day Gideon was called Jerubbaal, and to this day let Baals contend against him, because he broke down his altar. Now all the Midianites and Amalekites and the people of the east came together, and they crossed the Jordan and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon, and he sounded the trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called out to follow him. And he sent messengers throughout all of Manasseh, and they too were called out to follow him. And he sent to the messengers Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali, and they went up to meet him. Then Gideon said to God, If you save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it shall dry on the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so. So when he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, Let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the fleece. Please let it be dry on the fleece only, and all on the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night. And it was dry on the fleece only, and all on the ground there was dew. Now the reason is this, because he was questioning. He wanted God to confirm what it was that he was telling him to do. And he was doubting because he wanted to make sure. So let's get into it. Now the pattern of Israel's faithfulness and God's judgment repeats once more. After 40 years of peace, Israel returns to their evil, wicked ways, their practices of serving Baal and these other false gods of the Canaanites. So as God had promised, he turns Israel over into oppression, into their hands. This period of hardship comes in the form of much different ways than their earlier struggles. Now we're going to look at this because we got to pay attention. Israel's subjection under the Midianites is not like prior conquest. Israel is not occupied by the enemies, nor are they enslaved by them. So now this time, rather, Midian and all their allies from the east of Jordan River invade the land every year at harvest time. So now remember this, because remember, when we are working, we are supposed to see the fruits of our labor. And if we are not, there is a problem with that. These are curses, people. This is what this is about. Let's pay attention. They arrive with countless camels and tents and overwhelming numbers of soldiers and take all the crops and livestock away from Israel, leaving them with almost nothing. Israel's enemies lay waste to the land and then leave until the next harvest season. Now, after 7 years, Israel is completely crushed. Their phrasing used in the passage implies more than military defeat. Israel is humiliated, despairing, and miserable. The nation is just emotionally and spiritually ruined as they are hopeless and helpless. Finally, they beg God for rescue. Now, this time, God does not immediately rise up a deliverer. First, he sends a prophet. That messenger reminds the people that he is their provider and savior, that they are suffering because they did not obey him. This prophet is not named, neither does scripture say exactly whether the people responded to his message in any way. Now, when the Lord raises up a new judge, he selects an improbable man. The angel of the Lord, likely Christ in a pre-incarnate form, appears to a man named Gideon. This is the son of Joash. It is proceeding grain and wine press. Joash processing grain and wine press. Normally this work would be done in a roomy meadow, but because the Midianites raised, they keep taking this stuff. Gideon is hiding as he does the work of the servant. So still, the angel refers to Gideon as if he were an established warrior. Now, Gideon objects that he is the least of an unimportant clan, meaning the smallest yet important. So yet God insists Gideon would save Israel because the Lord will be with Gideon. And he asks to receive miraculous evidence that this message is truly from the Lord. Right, because he wants to make sure. Why not? Now, the Lord's plans for Gideon do not wait. That same night, Yahweh commands Gideon to dismantle an altar to Baal Nasherah, the pole on the father's land. Now, these were artifacts used in the worship of the false gods of that region. Gideon is told to replace those with an altar to the one true God of Israel and to sacrifice one of his father's bulls. So Gideon obeys at night with as much as secrecy as possible. And as expected, the men of town quickly discover what he has done. Now, Gideon's father, Joash, saves Gideon from the mob. He vows to kill anyone who kills Gideon, and he also points out that his neighbors, in their own beliefs about Baal, imply that Baal should be able to defend himself. Meaning, if he's a god, he should be able to defend himself. Now, Gideon's second name became Jerubbaal, reminding the people of his contention with the Canaanite deity. Now, as promised, the Spirit of the Lord come upon Gideon. This inspires his clansmen and fellow tribesmen, the people of surrounding tribes, right, to answer the calls to come and help fight. So, the help in this battle, the Midianites. Now, the enemy is once more camped in the valley of Jezreel as they prepare for the attacks. Israel is forced to begin to assemble. So now what happened, despite seeing any confirmation, Gideon seems to have yet another crisis of faith. This is a faith thing. Though he seems to realize he's being presumptuous, Gideon asks God to respond to a test, meaning he wants to make sure God is telling him to do this, not just on his own. We want to. Gideon's request is meant to prove that supernatural God is the one giving him these commands, and he's not doing it on his own. And Gideon used a furry animal skin to create this test. Now, when God successfully completes the miracle, Gideon unbelievably asks God to do another, this time in reverse. God graciously does this as well. These moments are the source of the praise, putting out the fleece, meaning to ask God for some unreasonably narrow sign to prove he is the one speaking to him. Now, this incident might suggest just how fearful Gideon was, which makes his obedience and his eventual success even more admirable. So now we're going to get into it. We're going to look at what actually is going on here, and we're going to do and just kind of unpack it, because we all have been to the place where we want to make sure that it's God. We want to know that it's God before we're doing anything. So let's look at it. Now, Judges 6, nothing that occurred in the quiet and peaceful times of Israel recorded for the 40 years. So when they were in the 40 years of rest, right? Because there's always seasons, seed time, harvest, there's rest, there's war, there's battles, there's life, there's death, right? So now after their last conquest, they had 40 years. There's nothing mentioned about, they just rested. Now the conquest of Jabin is passed over in silence. So here begins the story of another distress and another deliverance by Gideon. This is the fourth of the judges. Now here he is, the calamitous conditions of Israel by the inroads of the Midianites. Now remember, whatever they were doing, they started back into their own patterns and cycles of going backwards again, meaning back into sin. This is why God allowed it to happen. So the message God sent them by a prophet, don't know his name, by convincing them of sin to prepare them for deliverance. Now the raising up of Gideon to be their deliverer, God commissions, or which God sent him by the hand of the angel. Why he commissions his people, he calls them, he commissions them, and confirmed with a sign. Now the first fruits of his government, the reform of his father's house, the preparations were made for war by Midianites and encouragement given by him as a sign. So now we're going to look at this. We're going to break it down some more because, like I said, I am nosy. We know I am. We know we like to look at everything that is going on, pick it apart, take it apart so that we understand exactly what is going on. So we're going to look at it. Israel is oppressed by Midian. Why? Israel, again, does evil in God's sight. What that means? Practicing the worshiping of Baal. Now, God allows the Midianites to oppress them for 7 years. Now, the Midianites devastates their crops, their livestock, and their resources, leaving Israel impoverished. So this is the food, this is the livestock, this is their resources. Okay, so this is not just one thing, because remember, when you're not having resources, this is also an attack on your mental, emotional, physical health and well-being, your financial and your spiritual. Why? Because it impacts all of it. The Israelites cry out for God once again. So God sends a prophet who reminds them that God delivered them from Egypt, that they failed to obey his voice, and they turn to other gods. They need to repent and turn back. So the key theme is the cycle of sin, which is oppression, repentance, and deliverance. This is where we get that from. This is the same old cycle. Now, the call of Gideon, the angel of the Lord appears to Gideon, calling him, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." So Gideon questions, why is Israel suffering? Where are God's miracles now? Why? Because this is what they keep talking about. Oh, what God has done for them. And it's like, okay, well, he's done that. Then what is he doing now? This is what we do. So God tells him, go in the might of yours. I will be with you. Gideon doubts his ability. He is from the weakest clan of them all. He feels very insignificant. Don't we all at times? Gideon's asks for a sign, and God consumes Gideon's offering with the fire. Gideon realizes that he has a divine messenger and builds an altar and names it, "The Lord is Peace," meaning Yahweh Shalom. Okay. So now Gideon destroys the Baal worship. God commands Gideon to, one, tear down his father's altar to Baal. And I'm like, how are y'all actually still doing this? To cut down the Asherah pole. We're going to get into that and build a proper altar to God. Gideon obeys, but does it at night. He was afraid. Fearful but faithful. The townspeople want to kill him because of it, so his father defends him. If Baal is truly a god, let him defend himself. Gideon is renamed Jerubbaal. Let Baal contend. That's what it means. My only thing is the father. Why would you even have that? This is what is, and we're going to get into how these elders sometimes, when they're trying to train us, teach us, whether they're mother figures, father figures, and how they themselves, depending on what is going on in their lives, a lot of times they can and do lead us down the wrong paths. Why? For their own agendas. Okay. The spirit empowers Gideon, right? That's why we got to be careful of these leaders. Midianites gathered to attack Israel again, and the spirit of the Lord comes upon Gideon. Gideon calls the tribes to join him in this battle. Give me 1 second. He wants Israel to unite.
Something belongs to me. They got my name on it. There's a milk in the refrigerator. I want it.
Oh, you gonna have to wait because he's on break and I'm the only one here right now. So when he come back, I'll tell him to get it for you.
How long?
I don't know. You usually take about an hour. So you could come back and I have him go get it. So the spirit empowers Gideon. The Midianites gather to attack Israel again. The spirit of the Lord comes upon Gideon. Gideon calls the tribes to come and join him. Israel begins to unite. Now, Gideon's fleece says, Gideon still struggles with doubt. So he asked God for the confirmation. The first test was the fleece is to be wet and the ground is to be dry, right? The second test was the fleece is dry and the ground is wet. So God patiently confirms his will with both times. The key lesson is God meets people even in their weak faith, not just strong faith, where they are. So now, spiritual lineage, Israel's pattern. Judges 6 continues the repeating lineage patterns. Israel means disobedience, then they go into oppression, they cry out, and God raises a deliverer. Gideon is one of these deliverers. You gotta go upstairs. You gotta put clothes on. You can't be down here like that. So Gideon, yeah, you gotta go upstairs. You ain't got no clothes on. Gideon is one of these deliverers, judges chosen by God. Gideon's spiritual journey. Gideon represents a progression of spiritual maturity. Now we're going to look at the stages. Stage 1, the fearful survivor. The description of this is hiding while threshing wheat. He was in there hiding. He was afraid. Why? He's trying to help, but guess what? He can't help out front because it could bring about some situations. The questioner. He's doubting God's presence. Is this really God? Is this him? Is this his, Satan? What's going on here? Because, we have our voices and they tell us what to do sometimes. Whose voice are we listening to? Encounterer meets God personally. So this is what this is. Obedient but hesitant, acts in fear. Nighttime obedience. He didn't want to do it in the daytime. Empowered leader, spirit-filled and leading Israel. Now, his lineage is not about bloodline alone. It is about growth from insecurity to calling. Why? Because sometimes we doubt. We have issues. We struggle with our faith. This is what happens. Now, 3, connection to Christ. Gideon foreshadows Jesus in smaller ways. 1, he's called to deliver people from oppression. 2, he works through weakness, not strength. 3, he brings peace. The altar of the Lord is peace. But Gideon is flawed and he's doubtful. Jesus is perfect and fully obedient. So this highlights is the need for a greater final deliverer, which will be in Christ later on down. Now, spiritual meaning and lessons. God uses the weak. The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor. God sees who you are and who you are becoming, not just who we are or who we were. He calls people beyond their current identity. So meaning your calling is bigger than your self-perception. It will always be that way. Obedience starts at home. Gideon's first task wasn't fighting Midian. It was tearing down idolatry in his own household. Why? Because ministry always starts at home within us first. So we have to deal with our own issues before we go outward. Now, spiritual principle. Private obedience precedes public calling. God will always call you to clean up your own stuff in private first and then publicly be able to help. Now, God is patient with doubt. Gideon questions God multiple times. God does not reject him. Instead, God gives him confirmation. This is what we do. Meaning, faith doesn't mean lack of questions, because a lot of times we ask a lot of questions. I'm one of those people. God works with honest seekers. So now, true worship replaces false worship. Bow, the altar is torn down. God's altar is built in its place, meaning you don't just remove sin, you replace it with devotion to God. So this is something that we're doing. We have to pay attention to these things. Identity comes from God, not from circumstances. Gideon says, I am the least. And God says, you are a mighty warrior, meaning your identity is defined by God's calling, not your background. And remember, even in this last one, we talk about true worship replaces false worship. Now, what happens with that, because I wanted to, it just kind of popped out to me. When we're moving forward and we're growing in Christ, we're supposed to be seeing these things happen. We can't just be evolving and nothing's going on with us, meaning we're evolving or we're moving forward. Because some people could be saved with just sitting in church and not grow, not move. That's, So we want to be doing that. We don't want to be just, sitting. We want to be actively, progressing with the Lord. I think my problem is I be asking too many questions and doing too much, and sometimes I feel overwhelmed. But anyway, God brings peace before victory. Before the battle begins, Gideon builds an altar. An altar. The Lord is peace. The lesson is this: is God gives inner peace before outer breakthrough. Hold on 1 second. Who is this?
Hello.
Yes, hello?
I don't know if you remember me, probably almost a year. But it's the lady with the walker and the glasses. She's on the 5th floor. I forget her name. I was wondering if you can call her. So my name is Glasses. Well, James is my right name, but she knows me as Glasses.
Okay, did she know you're coming?
She told me to pull up on her. Like,
Do you have ID?
yes. All.
Cause she
it's
just
a new
came.
food stamp card.
Hold on, she just had went upstairs. Let me see. Where is it? Do you have the ID on you? Or?
It's this one. I don't.
So it's like
It's a new food stamp card. This is a, well, you know what I'm talking about. I forget her name.
Yeah. She just went upstairs. Give me 1 second.
Glasses James.
She just went upstairs, but she's in there. Unless she's not in here. I don't know, she's not answering. She just went upstairs, but she's not. Can you call on the phone?
I don't have a phone.
Oh, okay. I don't know what else to tell you at this point. She just went upstairs, but she's not answering, so I don't know if she's in the bathroom or she's in somebody else's unit.
Some other time, I guess. Like, she just told me, like, whenever I feel like coming.
This might be her. Yeah, I have a visitor for you. What's your name?
James Glasses.
James Glasses.
Skinny guy.
She's from here. Let me see, Audrey. Alright.
It's 5.
805. You can go upstairs. Yeah.
That's the 5th floor, right?
84.
Oh,
Eight
the
zero
five
eight
is right.
805. Yeah.
8.
Okay. So, I apologize about that. Anyway, so now what is going on is, so God brings peace before victory. Before the battle begins, Gideon builds an altar. The lesson is God gives enemies before outer breakthrough. Practical application: when we feel unqualified, God still calls. When we're fearful, obey anyway, even if it's at night, like Gideon, meaning, you know, you're not out in the open with it. If you're doubtful, bring your questions to God. Deal with personal altars, habits, influence before expecting outward change. Trust God's patience in your spiritual growth. Okay, and I wanted to know in this story what was really going on. So I asked more questions. And I said, what was evil in the sight of the Lord? Evil was mainly idolatry. So they were worshiping the Asherah and Baal. And they mixed God's truth with pagan practices. She said that there was some milk in the container in the refrigerator. I don't know, 805. Idolatry. So they were worshiping Baal and Asherah instead of God. They mixed God's truth with pagan practices. And don't we see that even to this day? We're going to get into Baal and Asherah because I want to take a quick look at them again to see what all they practice and what they, were involved in. Disobedience. God had commanded them, do not follow the gods of the land. That was in Judges 6:10. They ignored his voice and the commandments, and they continued on. Spiritual unfaithfulness is like cheating on God. In the Bible, idolatry equals spiritual adultery. Israel abandoned their covenant relationship with God. Remember, we are the bride of Christ. So the evil wasn't random mistakes. It was turning their loyalty away from God repeatedly. So this is not just a one-time thing. It was an ongoing situation. Now, who were the Midianites and the Amalekites? I wanted to know. Descendants of Midian, the son of Abraham. Wow. So, yes, because they did practice that. That's why God told him to get away from there, because his father was practicing those other, yes. So they were distant relatives of Israel. Remember, the same people and they were treating them badly, taking all of their stuff, all of their blessings. Don't you see? We're going to get to it. Meaning they were represent people connected to the promise, but living outside of it. Doesn't that make sense? Amalekites. Descendants of Amalek, the grandson of Esau, still their family, known enemies of Israel from the wilderness journey. First recorded attack. They attacked Israel when Israel was weak and tired. In Exodus, they represented relentless generational opposition to God's people. Now remember, these are their families. So these are not distant strangers. No, these are their own families. And remember, I said how they were coming. Remember, it talked about it, how they were planting, seeds to grow, and the Midianites would come only at the time of harvest and take everything that they had. So all of the work that they were toiling with their hands, they were coming and taking it from them. So they were benefiting off of what they were doing and not giving them anything out of it. Could you imagine? Think about your own life, think about what goes on it, and think about how your family, your friends, whatever, will allow you to work and plow, and then they themselves will wait until the blessing comes, the harvest comes, and they won't be around when the work is going on, but they want to come and partake and take everything you got. Pay attention to these type of things. These are not random. And when I was talking about curses, when you do not reap the benefits of your own labor, that is not a blessing. That is a curse. Please understand, when you see those things in your life, pay attention to those habits and those patterns, because those are signs of something going on. It could be spiritual. It could be disobedience on your end, but it could be someone actually attacking you, meaning this like this, attacking you in the spiritual realm, the warfare, as to taking what rightfully belongs to you, because you're supposed to reap the benefits and the fruits of your labor. If you are not reaping the fruits of your own labor and someone else is consistently reaping the fruits of your labor, that is not a blessing, that is a curse. Pay attention. So now, why were they attacking Israel? On the surface, it was economic warfare. Look at this. They wanted Israel's crops, livestock, and their land. And they came in like locusts and destroyed the produce. Now remember, locusts, caterpillars, we're going to get into them. Remember, these are like gnats, these are like flies. God used them before in Exodus when he was destroying the Egyptians. Why? Because they eat up the caterpillar, the cankerworm, the palmer worm. We're going to look into them. These are the things that eat away at your progress, your blessing, your harvest. This is what happens, and they come in and they destroy, steal, kill, and destroy. Now, spiritually, God allowed this because Israel broke covenant. God removed his covering and his protection over them. This is why. So the enemy didn't gain power. Israel lost protection. That's what happened. Now, what are the strongholds here? In Judges 6, strongholds weren't just physical. They were spiritual systems put in place. We see them in this world. We see them even, especially us as black people, redlining, all of these things that they use specifically against us to keep us from reaping the benefits of our own labor and for everyone else to reap the benefits of what it is we're doing. We do the work and we don't see any of the blessing that come from it. That is not good. And when we look at these things, we see they've been going on. Physical strongholds. Israel hid in caves, dens, and mountains. Why? Hiding. This shows fear, survival mindset, and oppression. Oppression comes in different forms. And remember, when we live in fear and survival mode for too long, everything is just becomes, it's not good. It's warped. Because you're not supposed to live like that for long periods of time. You will have times where you will live that way, but it should not be a consistent thing. Spiritual strongholds. 1, idolatry, Baal altar, false systems that replace God. Ooh. Fear, get in hiding, people living defensively all the time. Poverty mindset, we are the weakest, we are the least. This is what happens. Compromise, blending God's truth with pagan culture. Also, a stronghold is anything that controls thinking and behavior against God's truth. Now, why is others eating your labor is considered a curse? Why is because this is very important. It comes from covenant blessing versus the curse in Deuteronomy 28. Remember, choose this day blessings and no curses. You will eat the fruit of your labor. The curses you will plant, but you will not harvest. You will not enjoy it. You will not reap it. No, someone will constantly be eating the blessings that are supposed to come into your life. So when you see that you're working hard, and nothing's happening, you might want to look into your life and see what's going on. people, places, and things are around you that may be hindering it. It could be old things. It could be whatever. Look into it. Judges 6. Israel planted crops. Midian stole them. This represents loss of reward, delayed fruit, and others benefiting from your effort, from your labor. Spiritual meaning is when alignment with God is broken. Effort does not lead to fruit. It doesn't. Cycles of struggle repeat. You work but don't advance. It's not just punishment. It's disconnection from divine covering and order. Now, what kind of legacy is being shown? Before, Israel had in Judges 6 miracles, the Red Sea, manna, victory. This was the legacy they kept talking about in the remembrance, covenant identity. But they passed down incomplete obedience, tolerance of idols. So what happened? So the next generation inherited this compromise instead of conviction. Hold on 1 second. Oh, oh, excuse me. Okay, so now this is what they inherited. So the next generation didn't inherit the blessings. They inherit compromise instead of conviction. So now when we think of a lot of things, and I was talking about these motherly and fatherly figures, whether they are or are not, and they want to so-called help, and they try, and they're not really helping, and they're passing down these curses instead of blessings. A lot of them haven't checked their own lives, checked their own fruit, checked their own stuff that they're doing, and what they're passing down, or they have their own hidden agendas. They want to eat and benefit and live off of you for whatever reason. They don't want you to move ahead. You got to pay attention to these things. This is just the same type of things. Now during Judges 6, their legacy becomes fear instead of faith, survival instead of dominion, oppression instead of freedom. These are things we must pay attention. But God begins to raise a new legacy through Gideon. This is what that breaking of the cycles are all about. Calling out someone else to plant, to be the seed, to be planted. When you get planted, you have to die. You have to go down. You have to do all these things in order to bring forth a new harvest. This is what this is about. After Judges 6, Gideon begins to break idolatry. He tears down Baal altars. He restores true worship. He leads Israel towards deliverance. Why? The legacy shift from fear, idolatry, and loss to faith, obedience, and restoration. This is where we have to get back to. Why? Because when we look at our lives and we see a lot of times, even with our own parents, with our whatever, that they didn't plan ahead for us. They didn't prepare anything legacy-wise, anything passed down that was blessing. It was a lot of curses. What happened to the blessings? Meaning the homes, the finances, the mental, emotional, physical, financial, spiritual well-being. What have been passed down? This is a problem if we're not seeing the blessings and only the curses. Why? Because both are being planted. If not, what is going on? Something is going on. Now, the deeper spiritual pattern. This chapter shows multi-generational spiritual law. Compromise equals adultery, equals loss of covering, equals oppression. Crying out, it equals God raises up a deliverer, equals restoration begins. This is how it starts. Now, big spiritual meaning put together. Misplaced worship opens doors. What that means, what you prioritize becomes your God. So if you're only prioritizing fame, money, wealth, power, then this is what you're doing. You're replacing God, which is what they were doing, with the other gods. That determines your protection and or your vulnerability. Oppression often follows disalignment. This is not random punishment, but broken covenantal order. Why? Because God is supposed to always be first. Strongholds start internally. Before Midian invaded the land and idolatry invaded the hearts. So that says a lot. Now remember, even with the oppression that often find the disalignment. See, a lot of times we want to put our husbands and our families before God. That is disalignment. God is first, then your husband, then your children. This is how disalignment. All of these things is why Satan loves to disalign. He distracts. He do all these things. Why? To make chaos. Pay attention to these things. Also, strongholds usually start internally first. Before Midian invaded the land, idolatry invaded their hearts. So they had already placed God with these other gods, and whether it was money, power, you see how some of them went and they didn't want to get rid of these gods, or they had them. Why? Because they were using them. And a lot of times when we are not getting things fast enough or the way we want, this will happen, okay? Why? Because we don't want to wait, or something's going on. The anger, the bitter, the questioning, the doubt, the fear, it comes in, it seeps back in. Why? Because if we haven't seen any miracles, things going on in our lives, people don't pay attention. They don't talk about these things. If 40 years went by and there was wonderfulness, and then we start seeing a decline, it started getting us nervous about these patterns coming back. They start doing other things in panic. This is what happens. We got to pay attention. Now, God restores through unlikely people. This is another thing. Gideon, he was fearful, uncertain, and overlooked, yet chosen to shift the entire nation. Why? Because although he was just out of the smallest tribe and the unknown, God still uses those people. Remember that. Now, simple takeaway: the evil, turning away from God into idolatry and disobedience. Midian, Amalek, the forces that exploit weakness and disalignment. A lot of people will come when you are weak, when you're at your worst, and they will plunder you. This is how this works. Pay attention. We talked about this in the last one. People, places, and things, including the ones closest to you. Strongholds equal internal and external systems of control, which is fear, idols, and this mindset. Now, others eating your labor is a sign of broken alignment and a cursed pattern. This is not the way this is supposed to go. Whatever you plant, you shall reap. If you're not reaping, there is a problem. Or if you're just reaping the bad and not the good, that is a problem, meaning the curses are not the blessings. Legacy equals either compromise passed down and or restoration started by obedience. Remember, obedience is always better than sacrifice. So we're going to look at this from a modern day standpoint, from our cycles. I was talking about the bugs and the gnats and the pestilence. Why? Because they were talking about the locusts. Now, I'm going to put that in because we're going to see what happens. It's the cankerworm, palmer worm, caterpillar, locust. These are what naturally eats up the crops, meaning eat up the harvest in your life. Hold on. I'm going to put it in here. The cankerworm, palmer worm, caterpillar, and the locust. Yeah, I think these are the ones that do up all, eating up all of the harvest. And this is the way, Satan could come in and do. So now I looked at bug, gnats, pestilence, but okay, so we're gonna look at these. Hold on, let me go back. Okay, so now I also was looking at the gnats because I remember the gnats was something that went on during the time of what was it? Okay, hold on, wait. I gotta go back some more. Okay. So now the Midianites with the pestilence. These are now these can be deeper spiritual patterns, the bugs, the gnats, the pestilence, intrusive thoughts, words, actions, and even dreams upon this. We're going to unpack it because it could be different things. Now, it could be imagery. Why bugs, gnats, pestilence? Imagery can show up in the Bible. Swarms of locusts, gnats, and pests often represent overwhelming invasion. Judges 6:5, enemies came like locusts, too many to fight naturally. Spiritually is the problem that feel constant, small, but relentless. That's what these are, problems. They're small ones, but they're consistent and relentless. Not always one big attack, but many small training ones. I told you about the death by 1,000 cuts. Gradual destruction. Locusts don't always destroy. They don't destroy instantly. What they do is they strip things layer by layer. That's what I'm talking about, the slower. Meaning energy drain, peace eaten away, and progress slowly undone. So we got to look at these things because we see them in our life. Lack of control. You can't easily stop a swarm. This reflects situations of mental cycles that feel out of our control. We have to pay attention to these things. These could be our own thoughts, words, actions, and others. But a lot of times the battlefield is in the mind, is anything. Now, remember, he felt he was unworthy. He wasn't, Now, this is what happens. We're going to mirror it. The thoughts are examples of gnat-like thoughts, meaning I'm not enough, like Gideon said, nothing will change. Why is God absent? These are repetitive, draining, and small individually, but very powerful when they're put together. Now, words: complaining, fear-based speech, speaking limitation over ourselves. Words reinforce the swarm. What we say feeds out or fights the pattern. Our actions: hiding like Gideon in the winepress, playing small, acting from fear instead of calling. These actions create cycles of fear, small actions, limited outcomes, and more fear. Now, this could be in the form of dreams of bondage or different things. These things can represent dreams involving being chased, trapped, stuck, overwhelmed. They often reflect internal stress and or fear, feeling spiritually and or emotionally restricted. Now, in a spiritual framework, bondage, anything that repeats against your will, controls your reactions, or keep you from peace, growth, and or clarity. This is a form of oppression, strongholds as well. Those are, Now, how this connects to Judges 6. We see the Midian invades the land. These are negative patterns. Invade your mind and life. The crops are destroyed. The efforts that feel wasted. Israel hides. Withdrawal, feel survival mode. Baal, altar, represent or present misaligned values, thoughts, and habits. Now, Gideon's doubts are internal insecurity voices. Yes, so that's what that looked like. Now, what are the strongholds here? We're going to look at them based on words. Strongholds can look like persistent thought loops, fear-based identity, habits that feel hard to break, emotional exhaustion cycles, dream state patterns of stress. A stronghold is not just a problem. It is a pattern that feels like it's set up and it keeps repeating itself. So that's why I say we got to pay attention to these thoughts, words, action cycles, and patterns. Why it feels like bondage, right? Because it creates repetition. Same thoughts, same struggles, same outcomes, loss of fruit, effort, little reward. This is what that looks like. Identity distortion. You start to believe that this is just who I am. It can't change. This is what it is in my life. This is where this becomes a problem. Turning point, Gideon principle. Gideon didn't defeat Midian first. He did this first, tore down the altar of Baal. So these things inside of us, we have to tear those altars down, those strongholds, and replace it with the ones of God. We got to bring translation for our context. Before external change, internal orders. These are altars. Patterns, belief, influences must shift. We got to change and replace them with the ones of God. Practical way to break this down: the swarm pattern. Interrupt the small things. Since gnats equals small but many, catch one thought at a time, replace it intentionally. This is what we got to do. We have to watch our language and shift from I can't to I'm learning to. This never changes, so this is changing step by step. We could change one action pattern. Don't try to fix everything at once. Break one repeating behavior cycle and continue on. Reduce input overload. Pestilence often connects to too much noise, meaning media, stress, and negativity. And when you're rebuilding the inner altar, it's the simple terms as focus on what centers you. Truth, grounding, clarity, and purpose. Now, final insight, bringing it all together. Bugs, gnat, pestilence are overwhelming small disruptions. Thoughts, words, and actions are how the pattern spreads internally. Dreams of bondage and stuff like that are signs and signals of pressure and or feeling trapped. Judges 6 shows that this isn't random. It is a pattern that can shift. And the shift begins not with fighting anything or everything at once, but with changing the root inner alignment and the identity. Now, we're going to break it down because I wanted to see the destroyers. So the destroyers, these are layers of loss, invasion, and bondage, what these represent. Now, what the cankerworm left, the locust has eaten. What the locust left, the caterpillar has eaten. And what the caterpillar left, the palmerworm has eaten. This describes total progressive destruction, meaning nothing is left behind. What each one represents spiritually and symbolically. These are not just bugs. They represent stages of destruction and or attack. Now, the palmerworm is a cutting stage. The root word implies devouring, stripping bare. It comes first, meaning initial hits. Something begins eating away at your foundation. Early stage of loss and or disturbance. Example, first doubts, first disruption, and something starts to feel off. So that is the palmerworm stage, cutting. Locust, swarming stage, massive, overwhelming invasion. It comes in numbers, meaning problems multiply. What started small becomes overwhelming, right? Example, stress piles up, issues come all at once, feeling outnumbered and fluttered. That was what that can look like. Cankerworm is the consuming stage. Slow eater, crawls and eat what remains, meaning lingering effects, quiet erosion. What wasn't destroyed gets worn down. This can look like ongoing fatigue, emotional drain, and slow loss of motivation, joy, and or clarity. So when we see these stages in a highlight, this is what this means, and we need to pay attention. Caterpillar is the finishing stage. It completes the destruction cycle, meaning final stripping, nothing left untouched. Example, burnout, feeling empty and total depletion. The patterns is very important. This verse shows sequence: start small, multiply, linger, and finish you off. Not one attack, but layered. They're small, but over time. And this is what that looked like. Now, connection to Judges, this is what we are sensing. It matches exactly what happened with the Midianites. This is what they did. They came in like locusts. They took everything, left Israel with nothing. So both Joel and Judges describe cycles of repeated loss until nothing is left. This is how this relates to thoughts, words, actions, and dreams. We're going to connect it. The palmer worm, this is the first stage, is the inner experience, first negative thought and then disruption. The locust is the flood of thoughts, meaning the stress. Then it's the cankerworm, lingering anxiety and repetition. And then it's the caterpillar, feeling drained, stuck, and or in bondage. Now, while there's this feel like bondage, is layered pressure, repeated cycles, loss and of energy, clarity, and fruit. There's a sense that things are being taken faster than they are being restored. So if we ever looked at our lives, this is what this means. That's why it feels like something is eating away at us slowly. That's the cutting away, eating away slowly. Now, the deeper meaning in scripture is the pattern represents disalignment and vulnerability. When alignment is off, gaps open, things begin to consume slowly. Unchecked patterns grow. Small things that are not addressed can multiply. They do multiply, such as the locust stage. Time amplifies impact. What isn't dealt with becomes harder to stop later. As the erosion keeps getting bigger and bigger, it's like a little hole. Now, the hope is this part matters. Later in Joel 2:25, God says, I will restore you to the years that the locust and cankerworm, the palmerworm and the caterpillar and palmerworm have eaten. Meaning, even layered loss can be reversed. Nothing is beyond restoration. Now, what breaks the pattern? Following the same biblical pattern. One is awareness. You have to recognize these patterns, and when they happen, this is a pattern, not random chaos. 2, stop it early in the palmerworm stage. Deal with things when they are small and manageable. Do not continue to ignore them. Interrupt. 3, repetition. Change thought cycles, shift responses. Whatever it is going on, you have to change it. 4, restore foundation. Rebuild what was stripped away, meaning stability, clarity, and direction. Simple takeaway: palmerworm, locust, caterpillar, cankerworm, and locust. Layers of consuming forces. They represent gradual total depletion over time. This connects to external struggles, internal thought patterns, and repeating life cycles. But the key truth is what is eating can be restored. So now when we look at these things and we see them, why? Because each one of them represents like the cankerworm, the palm. They're eating away of the leaves of the trees. That's the harvest. Like people who plant and harvest and all of that seed and they already know these. They know certain pestilence. That's what they are. Will eat away if it's a rodent or whatever. And this is why they use certain things. They talk about the organic stuff and all that. This is the horticulture behind it. Why they use certain things to get rid of it without harming or attacking. Even God said in the word, the weeds and tares, the wheat and tares will grow together until they get older and you can tell the difference. Why? Because you don't know who's who and what's what when it's smaller, right? And if you take it away, you may destroy the whole plant, you may destroy the whole crop. So these things have to be maintained and taken care of seriously and not just a one swoop, situation. So I hope that this was a blessing. Oh, Baal and Asherah. Let me get to that before we're going to look at it. And their worship, because we want to know exactly what was going on. Now, these aren't just false gods. They represent a system of belief, behavior, and spiritual misalignment. It explains why everything else, oppression, loss, and devour was happening. So who is Baal? The meaning of Baal is Lord, owner, and master. The title used for Canaanite, storm and fertility god. Storm. What storms do? Destroy. They destroy. And it's fertility. So they would either eat away or destroy the fertility, meaning the crops. So what Baal represents is control over the rain, the crops, and the prosperity. And people believe Baal provides what we need to survive. This is why it was the attack the way that it was. This is why God allowed what happened exactly the way it did, because it went directly to what they were doing. So we got to look at it. This is tracking our warfare again. Spiritual meaning of Baal is misplaced dependence. Instead of trusting God, people trusted systems, environments, and substitutes for provision. In simple terms, something else becomes your source instead of God. So this is what this is about. Why? Because when they plant, they eat. That was their way, and they sell. That was their way of making money and all these type of things. Now, who is Asherah? Meaning a goddess often worshipped alongside Baal. Why? She represented by a wooden pole and or a tree. So it's an Asherah pole. What she represented: fertility, pleasure, growth, and sensual and or emotional fulfillment. So this is why the pole will be right next to it. Why? Because they work together hand in hand. And a lot of these gods and goddesses, when you look at it and pay attention, they do. So when you see one, you normally see the other. Now, spiritual meaning of Asherah. Asherah is a misdirected desire and or attachment. This is why instead of healthy alignment, people attach themselves to pleasure-driven living, emotional dependence, and external validation. Now, in simple terms, looking for fulfillment in all the wrong places. Wow. And depending on it to be your source. So Baal and Asherah together, this is the key. They were almost always worshipped together, and this is why. What they form a complete system. Baal is provision, control, and survival. Asherah is pleasure, desire, and satisfaction. So this provision and pleasure, control and desire, survival and satisfaction. These are the things, and this is why. So combining the meaning together, a life built on external provision, internal cravings instead of God, and this is why it caused everything to collapse. Why? Because Israel didn't just make a small mistake. They replaced God as a provider with Baal. So he was their provider. The source of fulfillment was Asherah. Now, loss of covering, God's protection is lifted, enemies could invade. 2, internal division, mixed beliefs, and confusion about truth. Then we have vulnerability to devourers, Midian, locusts, and imagery, the Job pattern. And then we have a system that they trusted could not protect them. So this is what that is. And when we look at it, it makes plenty of sense. Now, the stronghold here, the real stronghold wasn't Midian. It was dependence on Baal. But God allowed Midian to be the ones to do this. And attached to Asherah. Now, how this shows up: Baal-type strongholds, over-reliance on money, systems, structure, and control. Fear of lack. This is what this was about. Asherah-type strongholds, emotional attachments, seeking fulfillment in pleasure, distraction, and validation, difficulty in letting go. Now, why Gideon had to tear it down first? Because before defeating Midian, God told Gideon, destroy the altar of Baal. Cut down the Asherah pole. You have to get rid of it. Meaning you cannot remove oppression, restore fruit, and break cycles without removing what replaced God in the first place. So this is how we ended up here. Now, connection to the devourers is what we asked before. Now, it all fits together. Baal Asherah equals a root system. The locust, the cankerworm, all of that equals, etc. a result. The Midianites were used. Now, the pattern was misplaced source. They misplaced it. Why? Because they used Baal instead of God. Misdirected desire was Asherah. Why? That was the pleasure. Open door, devourers consume, loss of fruit, and sense of bondage. Why? It leads to others eating our labor. Because Baal promises provision, but is false. Asherah promises fulfillment, but it is empty. So you work, you invest, but there's no real covering and or alignment. So the result is effort without lasting fruit. This is what happens. So now the deeper lesson is the Baal question. What am I relying on as my source? Am I relying on God or all of these other people, places, and things? And I've replaced them and put Baal as my source. Now, when it comes to Asherah, what am I depending on for satisfaction and or identity? Is it God, or am I replacing it for all these other things? Same thing. Now, the final takeaway is simple and clear. Baal is a false source, meaning what you trust to provide. Asherah, false attachment, what you depend on to feel fulfilled. Together, they equal a system that replaces God, and this opens the door for 1, loss, cycles of depletion, and 3, feeling eaten up and or drained. Now, one line summary: before external things change, internal altars, the internal things, what we rely on and attach to, must be torn down first. So these fear cycles, financial patterns, relationships, and mental loops is very practical, and they are in a real real life way. Now, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to go into this. Okay, yes, I'm going to do it. This is going to be the last. And it's going to complete. It's going to complete this. This was a really, really good word. Good morning. Not just for you guys, but for myself, because I've been dealing with my own stuff. So now we're going to look at the pattern in real life across everything: thoughts, money, relationships, behavior, and those cycles that feel like loss and or that they are being eaten up. So we're going to look at through a practical 1, mental thought patterns. Baal is a false source in the mind. I need to control everything to be okay. My security depends on this job, the money, and the outcomes. And if this fails, I'm done. The root is control and fear. Fear of lack, right? So we want to control everything, and we have fear of lack. Now, Asherah is false attachment in the mind. It says, I need this to feel validated. I need approval to feel okay, and I can't let this go. The root of this is emotional dependence. Now, the result is the devourers. Overthinking are the locusts that swarm. Mental exhaustion is a cankerworm. Not yet. Loss of clarity and peace. When he comes, I tell him. 2, finances is work. Bound pattern provider substitute. Overworking from fear, hustling without rest, trusting income more than alignment. My job is my security. So this is how this works. So then Asherah, the pattern is fulfillment through money and lifestyle, spending to feel better, chasing lifestyle validation, comparing constantly. Money proves my worth and or happiness. This could be in education. It could be in anything. Remember, whatever we're replacing. The result of this is work hard, still feel behind. Income comes, but it disappears quickly. Others seem to benefit from our efforts, but this is the eating of our labor pattern. That's the way that it's going. Ooh, relationships. Bow pattern, control, trying to manage people, controlling people, see, with your agendas, your personal, this is what this is. Over giving to secure connection, that is another one. Fear of losing people, I need to hold this together, people, places, and things, that is the bow pattern of relationships and control. Asherah pattern is attachment, emotional dependency, codependence, needing constant reassurance, staying in draining connections. I need this person to feel okay. Wow. The result is drained emotionally, repeating unhealthy patterns, and losing yourself in others. This is how this goes. This is how you lose yourself in other people. Oh wow. Habits and actions, the bow type behaviors. Overwork, burnout cycles, constant doing but no rest, need to stay in control of everything. Ooh. Asherah type behaviors, escapism, scrolling, overeating, and distractions, pleasure seeking to cope, and avoidance. Result is energy is drained, the caterpillar stage, time disappears with little return, and life feels stuck and or repetitive. Okay, dreams, this is the inner state. What we said earlier connects strongly here. Why? Because you'll start seeing things in your dreams. Common patterns: being chased, being stuck and or trapped, losing control, swarms of chaos and pressure. Meaning here, these reflect overwhelmingness, loss of control, balance, emotional entanglement, Asherah imbalance, and not something mystical to fear, but signs of internal stress and patterns. Now, simply put, look at this, the root cause of everything. This is the stronghold. Bow is I must control and secure everything. Asherah is I need something external to feel fulfilled. Together they create anxiety and attachment, effort and emptiness, motion without progress. And that's the devourer life feeling. Now the full cycle, this is the big picture. Fear and or lack, grab, control, bow. Attached to something, Asherah. Drain begins. Small losses, that's the palmer worm. Overwhelmed, that's the locust. Lingering stress, that's the cankerworm. Burnout, that's the caterpillar. Now how to break it in real practical. Identify your bow. Ask, what do I feel that I must control to be okay? Then we loosen control in small ways. Accept uncertainty gradually. Identify our Asherah. Ask, what do I feel like I need to feel okay? Then you reduce dependency slowly. Build internal stability instead. 3, stop the early stage of the palmer worm. You got to catch the one thought, the one habit, and the one trigger. Don't wait until it becomes overwhelming. Reset your actions. Choose the one healthier pattern. Sleep routine, boundaries. Stick to simple consistencies. 5, regulate input. Too much noise, stress, and comparison feeds the swarm. 6, build internal grounding. Replace external dependence, internal clarity. Reaction with internal action or intentional action. Now, what restoration looks like? When the pattern shifts, you still work, but you don't feel drained. You still care, but you aren't control or trying to control others. You still build, but you're actually keeping the fruit, meaning you're building, but you're growing, and you're actually working and keeping your labor, your fruit. Final takeaway, what you're seeing, meaning bugs, devourers, patterns, and bondage, is actually a system where control, bow, and attachment, Asherah, slowly drain your energy, clarity, and outcomes. So, Breaking it isn't about doing everything at once. It's about releasing control step by step, detaching in healthy ways, and interrupting small patterns early. So now this is how we're going to do this with our stress, our habits, relationships. This is the framework, okay, so that this becomes even more, better for us. And it does have it for work and stress, habits, and relationships more. But I am going to leave you with this because it's been an hour. It has been long. I am so sorry. But this has been very, informative. It has been very actual and factual. We can put this in any aspect of our lives, whether it's our jobs, whether it's our careers, it's our businesses, it's our family, it's our friends, our marriage patterns. It could be spouses, it could be friends, it could be whatever. Any people, place, a thing. We can add these and put these to it. So I hope that this was a blessing to you guys. I hope I break it down. I hope I've given you a lot to consider, to think about within your own selves and your own lives. Just as I am with my own, I'm looking at it every time I do these. I look at my own life and say to myself, well, dang, here I got a whole lot more stuff that I need to be getting busy with. But guess what? God is able. We need to get our hopes up. I need to find something. Oh, let me read something out of here just to help us out with this. Because even in these hard times, hope is our anchor. We have this hope as an anchor of the soul, firm and secure. Hebrews 6:19. It is silly not the hope. Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. Honey, we have to have some type of hope, especially in times when we are going through so much. So, with this being said, this has been Judges chapter 6. I hope that this word was a blessing to you guys. I am about to start getting back into it because I got to whip my discipline back on myself and ask God to help me get these things back in order for myself as far as my life and what's going on. And I won't be going on any more vacations, at least not yet, probably in July. But for now, I need to, get my house cleaned up, unpack. I enjoyed my time with my son. I really, really did, and I needed that. And now it's time to get back to the regularly scheduled programming and get back to work, get back to, the Lord and all these things that I need to be doing. And I hope that you guys as well are doing the same in our lives, in the natural and the spiritual, whatever we're seeing going on. Pay attention to these things. If you don't know, look them up. Google can just about tell you just some of everything at this point. And it is a great, wonderful tool to help us. Ask God to help us with some things, researching books, the Bible, different things, fast pray, whatever you need to do for yourself to get the answers and the things that you need for yourself and your family. Why? Because we're not going to be just sitting here sitting ducks. Okay, we want to see change, we want to see growth, and we want to see these things happening in our lives, and it's nothing wrong with that. It may not happen all at once, it may not happen when we want to, it may not be on, we may not all happen to each other at the same times or whatever, but for the most part, we do want to see change, we want to see growth, and with the world being the way it is, and everything being just so crazy right now, everything that went on before is going on now. We are seeing the same, stuff going on. Like I said, I myself, trying to get it together. But anyway, we are bruised and not broken. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. I hope that I have been a blessing to you. I hope that the Lord has given me whatever it is that you needed to help you in your life, with your family, your friends, on your journey, so that you can, learn, figure it out, whatever questions, a little bit more. And that's basically what I'm here for, because I'm going through it myself and I'm just sharing these things, the questions and things that I have. Like I said, it started out as a testimony and then, it just went from there. And, I'm hoping that God is blessing. I know that He is, using me to help others to find their way back to Him and to live their lives practically here. Living here and not being of here is what we're supposed to be doing. So, Judges chapter 6. We are bruised and not broken. Be blessed in Jesus' name. I'm back, y'all. I'm trying to get it together. I love you guys. Be blessed. Like I said, and for all my newcomers, I have about 500 videos. Look at the old ones, because I'm telling you, a lot of these old videos that I have, you will see that they connect with whatever, and it explains a lot. Please do that, because it would be so much, and especially during the times when I myself am not posting, because sometimes, forgive me, if I'm on break, if I'm tired, if I'm doing stuff and stuff is going on in my life, I may not be posting as much. Remember, I do have to look up some of this information, then I have to put it all together in order to bring it forth hours. So because of that, and I have work and other things as well, just like everybody else, please understand I try to do the best that I can. Work with the kid. I thank you so much. Be patient with me. Love you guys. And in Jesus' name, be blessed. Amen.